everyone, this is Persephone, and today I'm going to tell you the story about how your parents ruined their lives by marrying each other, having kids, and then dealt with the whole issue by trying to control and ruin yours. This is going to be trigger warning, very disturbing content, so if you feel bad or if you don't want to watch it, feel free to skip it. The reason I'm so invested in this is because I get many messages from people who are saying, I saw this video of yours about how narcissistic mothers create beta sons, and I'm going to say it once more, the good stuff are on OnlyFans, unfortunately behind the paywall because of YouTube censorship. If you asked me what I would want to do ideally, it would be all of the NSFW stuff to be above on OnlyFans and all of the advice to be here, but YouTube seems to be harassing me even for advice. So this video is going to be a bit watered down, but I think if anyone needs help, you'll be in the right direction. It's not meant to substitute therapy. If you can get a therapist, go get the help you need, because I'm the psychiatrist from Mordor here, okay? Armchair diagnosing, armchair conclusions, use whatever works for you from what I'm going to say. So let's start by the institution of marriage that in my opinion has become fatally flawed, because it has become unrealistic when it comes to monogamy, to maintain sexual attraction for 50 years straight, and a bunch of other things that I know now that all of the traditionalists, the conservatives, the religious crazy people are going to send me death threats and hate again, but I don't care, the truth has to go out. What happens is that less than 5% of marriages are actually successful and happy long term. I've read that in a psychology book and I believe it. In most cases, marriages are doomed to fail for various reasons. Reason number one is that many people don't even marry someone that was their first choice or someone that they were genuinely attracted to. I say that because, especially if you come from a culture that has arranged marriages, there is a pretty good chance that your parents were leftovers, that they just got matched up with someone and rolled with it. Or that what happens is that I talk to guys from all over the world who join my paid media, and they say, there was this woman that I was very much in love with her, but we were too young and we broke up, and then I never found anyone like her, and I was over 30 and I tried to get back with her and she was already married and she didn't care, so I married my wife, this kind of thing. Or for women that it's the time to have children, everyone is pressuring them because even now there is huge stigma against child-free people, and they marry someone to have kids with, usually the guy they date, when they get into the age where people pressure you to have kids. And although people start marriage with the best of intentions, there is so much lying surrounding the issue that it's not their fault that they end up in this terrible situation. So if you watch me and you are married and you see yourself in this, it's not your fault. The first thing that I'm again going to say and be called a degenerate is that sexual attraction eventually goes away. It's going to be 3 years, it's going to be 5 years, it's going to be the 7-year itch, it's going to be after you have kids, it's going to be after you get into a terrible job and you start putting on weight. I don't know what is going to trigger it, but eventually people move on from lovers to parents to business partners, like managing the house like a business, or to something that is very anti-sexual. Bonus points if you married someone who was anti-sexual to begin with. I could mention my Asian mother-in-law to be like petty for a second, that she is so anti-sexual that the clothes that she's wearing and the stuff that she's doing, even if you knew her for 10 days when she was young, you would still be repulsed. Some people have less charm than others, although charm is a skill, you can build it, but many women don't even bother because there's so much desperation that they can find a guy even if they're a 2 out of 10. Usually when you see that something is wrong, that you see on Reddit, various subreddits discussing my boyfriend isn't into me, my wife isn't into me, people are going to give you a bunch of stupid advice that in my opinion is essentially glorifying faking. Plan dates, be sexy, surprise the person. There was one time that one of my Reddit accounts, when I used to use that fake cancel hold Reddit, got banned because I made the mistake to answer one question in a thread, like the oldest person talking with no filter. And there was a woman that she said, I'm married to my husband for 15 years and we don't have sex anymore. And I decided to try popular advice that she read in some magazine, I don't know, Cosmopolitan or something, that would be sending him nudes. And he wasn't interested and she was very upset about it. And I asked, I'm sorry, why would the man be interested when he has seen your naked body for 15 years straight? And She was also becoming decrepit between you and me. She had let herself go. So I'm going to give you a little bit of TMI here. First of all, for me, I'm not aroused by seeing random body parts of anyone. That's not my thing. But if, let's say, you want to be the exception, that you want to send me some picture that is going to see, they're like, oh my god, what is this? Who is this person? Two terms have to apply. Term number one is you have to be like smoking hot, like six pack, big penis, over 6 feet, extremely hot guy. And thing number two is I must not know you. We must be on the flirting stage. Otherwise, I'm still not going to care. And that applies to me, and that applies to a lot of other people. The difference is that autistic people like me admit it, and neurotypical people pretend that that's not the case. People got so mad when I asked that why would this guy be interested when he has been seeing you every day for 15 years, that I lost my account. They reported me so much that I lost my account. This is what happens to your parents. Eventually they lose interest in each other. People who are relatively healthy, when this happens and they don't want to start cheating or they don't want to start abusing each other, divorce. This is happening a lot more in our current society than in the past. And when I see people saying, oh my god, society is at a state of collapse because of the divorces, I'm rolling my eyes, because divorcing someone when you are not into them and when you can't make them happy, like when you have a dead bedroom, when you verbally abuse each other, when you live parallel lives and you are lonely, that's for me the kind thing to do. And it shows that you actually had feelings for each other, because it's also respectful. It's much more respectful than the other alternatives that I'm going to mention. The other alternatives are, for men, if you had a father like that, he was bored of your mother. I know you were too young to understand. I've been there too. And one thing is the father becoming workaholic, always being away from home and treating the home like a hotel, like he comes home exhausted to eat and sleep and pass out or just drink a 6-pack of beers and be a zombie in front of the TV and ignores you. In case of immigrant parents, I know people that they said that, for example, my father was Asian, let's say from Vietnam, because I dated Asian guys and I knew a lot of Asian people, and they said we were in America for 50 years and my father never bothered to learn English to communicate with us. It's because he didn't want to. As harsh as that sounds, he didn't want to. And this is actually praised by society, because if anyone dares to say anything, they're going to say, like me, I'm just busting my ass off to provide for my kids and I work 2 jobs, and how dare you say that? In fact, it's not about your kids, it's about usually to avoid his wife and avoid the nagging at home. Another way to cope with the problem is that men can cheat. If you are like my father-in-law, aka closeted homosexual, he would go to the Korean bathhouse that is, calling it a sauna, but it's a gay bathhouse where people go for random sexual encounters. I say this with zero homophobia. I just say stay safe if you want to do this. But he would go there every day, and he's like the cleanest person I know, showering and going to the sauna like so many hours, and that's his way to cope with it. And usually that happens with, again, treating the house like a hotel, coming to eat, coming to sleep, and that's it. When this has happened, when your father has done things like that, usually he abdicates his responsibility towards you as their son, because this usually happens. It can happen with girls too, but I think it's boys who get more damaged, because boys need a male role model more than girls, in my opinion at least. What does the mother do? Because of society and because many women have let themselves go completely, or because of their own limiting beliefs and so on, women try to actually substitute their emotional needs through their kids, which is again something praised by society. Unless the woman is batshit crazy, she's going to be damaging you, and instead of society saying, like, lady Karen, let the kid breathe, give some space to the kid, she's going to be praised as a doting mother, an involved parent, and so on. And that is actually destroying your life. Examples. Pretending you don't have a sexuality when you grow up. I'm not even going to refer to people who are bisexual, pansexual, sissies, cross-dressers, and so on, because that is way more advanced for most women. I'm going to refer to the actual, again, Asian example, where until the man is 25 or 28 or 30, there is no mention for women, for sex. If he wants to date someone, they're going to tell him that you should focus in school, you should focus on getting a job. And the moment he hits some kind of number, like in his age, 28 or 30, they're going to say, why aren't you married and why don't you give me grandkids? as if the person who is a total incel or a virgin or has no idea what's going on with dating, one day he's going to wake up, propose to a woman, she's going to accept, and they're going to have kids. This is again unhealthy, but it's going to get a lot more unhealthier, so please, if you feel triggered, it's time to step away from the video. The mother is using the son as a substitute for what her husband isn't giving her. I've seen mothers saying, I'm having my son taking me on a date, or my son is the most handsome, or I'm in love with my son. This is freaking sick. This is called emotional incest. She may not be touching the son sexually, but it's invasive, it's icky, the kids feel uncomfortable, and it's very damaging. It prevents the child from individuating, from becoming his own person. To take it one step further, she could actually be doing things that they are covert sexual abuse. For example, walking into her son when he's bathing, making comments about his penis size or about his development of his body or his lack of development, fat shaming him, saying, oh my god, you're so fat, no woman will want you, like horrible stuff. And the father is in his own little world, either passing out with beers on the couch or actually being out pretending to work or actually working in a compulsive way or cheating. This is the good case. The bad case is the mother deciding that you are going to remain her baby forever. By baby, I mean actually infantilizing the son, treating the son like he's incompetent. A good example is never teaching the son to cook after himself, to cook for himself, to clean after himself, to be an adult. She doesn't teach anything adult-like, and the excuse is you're going to get married and your wife is going to be doing everything. That's bullshit. We live in the 21st century, and if you are an able-bodied man, it's a shame that you can't cook for yourself and you can wash your own clothes and do your own dishes. I know men who are in their 50s and their mother is still doing their laundry. Honestly, you need an intervention. This is like extremely severe. Calling every day and demanding to know everything about his life and being extremely nosy, showing up unannounced at his house, and this can happen in very, very sneaky ways. For example, she can say, can you give me a key to your apartment for an emergency? And then she's using it to come and go as she pleases. I'm going to use TMI, like too much information examples from my own life in the past. You would see my Korean mother-in-law screaming on the phone in Korean and saying me or her to my Korean husband, that if you didn't know, if you had no context about what's going on, you would say, the woman like me is some kind of mistress, and the woman screaming on the phone is the wife, because you say, how can you betray me? She would say things like, how can you betray me? How can you break up our family? And be screaming and crying, and it was his mother. Like, what the fuck is going on here? I told her once, I never tried to substitute you as a mother because I'm not this man's mother. So you have to stop. And she would be screaming and crying that I'm taking him away from her. Do you know what this woman needs, honestly? She needed to divorce and get a boyfriend or get someone to actually like transfer all of these emotional needs to. Because this is something that a person that you are in with a sexual relationship should be covering, not your son. You don't say to your son me or her about his girlfriend or about his wife because you're his mother. One time when I was particularly pissed off, I asked her, do you plan to have sex with your son? Or do you plan to like leave him as an incel forever? Because you say me or her, but there are things that you can't do that his girlfriends can do or his wives can do. And she called me degenerate and she hung up. Oh well. I say this because I'm sick of this secret, this elephant in the room in so many people's lives. It's because your parents didn't have the balls to sit down on a table and say, hey, we don't like each other. We don't have sex with each other. We're not lovers with each other. What are we going to do? Are we going to divorce? Are we going to have an open marriage? Are we going to, I don't know, join a cult and do something else? Find a way to cover our own needs as adults. TMI from my own life, again, my father's case. My father never wanted children. He wanted a younger version of himself. That's what I realized growing up. Or he wanted a feminine girl in the way that we see feminine in those traditional movies, or if you want to see it like Handmaid's Tale. My father would find Aunt Lydia on Handmaid's Tale, if you have watched the series, completely logical. He would say, that's who you should follow to be a right woman. And he would also be, I also had the same humiliating and shaming events when I was like in my early 20s, like 19 or 20. And I would say there was a time when I decided to travel to some nearby town with my friends, and he would be making a huge drama out of it. And I asked him, like, if I travel to another country, what are you going to do? And he would be screaming on the phone and saying, how can you do this to me? And how can you leave me behind? And we won't be able to see each other again. That, again, if you didn't know who I am and who he is, you would say, girl, damn that loser boyfriend of yours. Like, he's so controlling. Why is he such a drama queen? And it was my father, like, how fucking sick is that? When you have parents like that, they're going to do anything and everything they can to stunt your growth, to prevent you from becoming independent, because if you leave and you become independent, they are going to have to look in their marriage for the first time in years, and they don't want to deal with that. They say that the more a person is out of control internally, the more they try to control others externally. That gives them some sense of power, that if you're still around and you're still mommy's baby, then mommy isn't worthless and she has an excuse for being a femcel. I don't like using this term, but it exists. She has an excuse for being 60 pounds overweight and doing nothing. She has an excuse for being an alcoholic, and so on. So please, if you look down on people who divorced, especially at an older age, stop doing that, because their kids are probably saved. While the people who will never divorce, their kids are always going to be caught up in this typhoon of drama that essentially has to do with your own parents and their failed sex life, to be honest. I don't like, for me, I feel like I'm throwing up in my mouth a little every time I try to imagine the sex life of a parent or my own parents, but it all stems from there, you know? Otherwise, why there is so much need for control? I know that for some people, parenting can be an unrewarding task, especially if you had kids, without really thinking about it, just because that's what everybody else is doing. But if that was the case, I was thinking it about myself, because my parents were teen parents and my father can go on and on and on for 3 days straight about how much being such a young father ruined his life. Okay, then when I'm out of the house, why don't you just go on with your life? Because my mother doesn't let him go on with his life, because she's also a control freak and toxic. If you are a beta man and you watch this, and you see similarities in more than half of these things that I said, I'm going to tell you some good news and some bad news. First, the good news. You deserve to have your own life as much as any other human being on this planet has the right to have their own life. You did not come to this earth to be an indentured servant so that some middle-aged woman or old woman avoids her failed marriage and her problems. The bad news, no one is going to help you. You are going to have to fight for it. And when you decided to declare the war of independence and say, you know, I'm a grown-up man, I'm 25, I want to start living as someone who is 25, not as someone who is 10 or as someone who is married to my mother, you know? Everyone is going to be against you, not just your parents. Do you know why? Because there are many other relatives, and there are many other people that they benefit from you being the emotional tampon and doing all of the emotional labor for your parents. What is emotional labor? You having to manage your mother's feelings, and you having to manage your own feelings by being constantly oppressed. For example, when your mother is having a tantrum and you go out with a woman and you think of proposing, and your mother says, over my dead body you are going to be married to this whore, and then your father says, son, can you please hold your mother and calm her down? And can you please think about it and not propose for now, because things are very bad at home? If you call her and you try to say shit to calm her down, that's emotional labor. Her emotions are not your problem. Like for my Asian mother-in-law, people would say she has empty nest syndrome. Well, empty nest syndrome, my foot. When her daughter was chasing white guy after white guy for 700 years and she was living with them, she never had empty nest syndrome. Do you know why? Because she wasn't using her daughter as a substitute for her closeted homosexual husband. She was using her son. So when that went away, she collapsed. Everything collapsed. I'm going to take things one step further. This is going to be semi-conspiracy theory. It's my idea. I believe that a lot of us who come from very dysfunctional families are collateral damage in society. That society understands that people like our parents may become very unstable mentally, not to the point of necessarily becoming a danger to society like shooting up a school, but for example, my mother, who was a Xanax and alcohol addict, she quadrupled the amount of alcohol and Xanax she was consuming after I left, because she didn't have an emotional punching bag and sometimes a practical punching bag. Society realizes that they don't want to waste resources for pathological people, and they don't want to waste resources for educating people about how marriage may be an outdated concept. And now people are going to say, Oh, what do you recommend then instead of marriage? I recommend not getting married. Or if you're going to get married, ideally in a society, if people insist on getting married, I would say have a marriage that is renewable every 5 years. That if after 5 years you still want to renew your oaths in a ceremony, you can. If someone doesn't want to, they can get a quiet and very cheap divorce. Society realizes that for a lot of people to live good lives, someone else has to live a bad life. And slavery is abolished officially, at least. So we are all the unofficial slaves. And I know people who told me I wasted my life taking care of my mother, doing emotional labor for her extreme needs. I'm not talking about actually respecting and taking care of your elder parent, which is normal and the right thing to do. I'm talking about being an incel so that your mother doesn't throw tantrums. That's fucking sick. And then you're 50, 60, your mother dies one day, and there is no concern from anyone on the planet about what's going to happen to you. You know, you're 60. And I ask this to many people, and I've given mental breakdowns to many people. And there are people who blocked me and never came back, and I lost money from that. But I still think that telling them the truth is the right thing to do. I sleep well at night knowing that I told them, and whatever they do with that information is up to them. And that is, you're living with your mother and she's actively cock-blocking you from pursuing a relationship. What's the plan after she dies? Because if you can't find a woman at 35 or at 45, you're sure not going to find her at 55 unless you somehow become the next crypto millionaire or something like that. And they say, oh my God, I never thought about this. Are all of these people stupid? Is it that they really didn't have the IQ to think about this and I'm some kind of genius? No, it's because society creates so many distractions to numb yourself from the pain so that you end up the disposable incel. If you think about it, you work all of your life, you go home to numb all of your pain with porn, with alcohol, with junk food, with TV shows, with Twitter, and before you know it, you're an old fat guy. Your mother is even older and fatter than you. I don't say fat in a fat shaming way. I say that whether you like it or not, looks matter, and being fat limits your chances of dating. Women have already sky-high hypergamy as it is. Even men who are good-looking contact me and they have problems. And then one day she's going to die, and what's going to happen to you? And someone needs to ask that, what's going to happen to you? I know that this is a massive problem. This is not me offering solutions with one video or even 10 videos. But I believe someone needs to call it out that a lot of the problems come from people's sexual frustration and the fact that society isn't equipped to give solutions to that. To say to people, hey, you can divorce, or hey, it's okay to have open marriages, okay, it's okay to just be alone and have no marriage and figure things out. And like I said, you have to decide to sit by yourself and think and make a decision. It's a difficult fight, not everyone can do it, and if you don't feel ready or if you want to think about it, I don't blame you. I had to sit down with myself before I did many of the things that I've done that got me out of the mess. Do I really want to go down that path? Do I really want to go down, like at war practically with my parents? But in my case, it was relatively simple because my mother is so horrible and so abusive and she tried to kill me. There is multiple times. There is a story in a previous video if you're interested in like the gory details. So in my case, it was like a survival thing. You don't do it, you die, so you have to do it. But maybe you are not such a clear case. Maybe your mother is still paying your bills. Maybe she's still cooking for you. Maybe sometimes she's nice and you love her. But at the end of the day, you have to look at the big picture. You're not helping anyone by enabling all of this dysfunction. And if you say, well, you know, Persephone, you sit there talking shit so easy, but my mother is too old to start over, what's going to happen to her? Sometimes, I'm going to tell you something that you're not going to like. Not every problem has a solution. I also feel sorry for people who were victims of previous generations and all of the nonsense that came with it. That women had to stay with one guy or they were damaged goods, or that women had to let go of themselves to take care of children to the point that no one is going to even look at them to date them now. But essentially, sometimes you need to have a tough choice. Are you okay with you having no life so that your mother remains in this psychotic convenience? Because it is psychotic at the end of the day. The idea that your son is going to be an incel until he's 30 and then he's going to meet a woman and have kids the day he turns like 30 plus one day, that's psychosis. It's not going to happen. Because this man has so much damage already on him that he needs intense therapy and he needs to take things very, very slow. And even then, there is no guarantee that this is going to happen. In general, the younger you are and you find this video, the better your chances are of reversing the problem. Things that you need to start doing right now, like literally right now, you post a video, you take pen and paper. Thing number one, you see the hooks that your parents, especially your mother, have on you. What does he have on you? Do you live in your house and you don't pay rent? Do you work at the family business? Even worse, you don't work at all. Even worse than that, you never had a job. Financial independence is number one priority, because financial independence is going to give you the money to impose boundaries, to blackmail even if you have to say to your mother, you stop your drama or I'm moving out. If you are the kind of guy who doesn't have a penny under his name, you can't threaten anyone. At best, you are going to start copying her and also causing drama and also acting in a feminine and repulsive way. No woman wants to deal with that. And you're never getting out. But financial independence can be achieved. There are plenty of ways to make money, both online and in real life. Don't believe the nonsense that society is ruined and we can't make money. The people who want to make money will find a way. Prioritize that. Thing number 2. What areas is your mother using to make you practically artificially disabled? What do I mean by artificially disabled? Can you drive? Can you cook your own food? Can you wash your own clothes? Can you set up an alarm clock and get up in the morning, or she comes to wake her baby up like you are 7 years old and about to go on the school day? Do you know how to pay your own taxes? Do you know how to go to the doctor? Do you have your own phone plan, or you are a dependent on her phone plan? Are you, even worse, are you a dependent on her when it comes to paying taxes? If the answer is, oh my God, what is this woman talking about? I don't know how to do any of that stuff. You have to, like I said, that's why I said take a pen and paper, write down these areas. They're important areas in adulting. And I hate the word adulting, but I don't know what other word to use now. Thing number 3, are you actually having any plan on how you are going to meet women? The idea that I'm going to throw money into Twitch cam girls and to OnlyFans cam girls and to actual cam girls and one of them is going to date me, yeah, that's not going to work. So you have to get into, because of the virus that shall not be named, because it brings the demonetization fairy, we're going to say online dating. If you can't do it, there is no shame with finding therapy, especially cognitive behavioral therapy, and start working with a therapist on how to build your social skills. For the love of God, don't be the kind of guy that says, I love walking, eating, and movies on his profile. I see this and I'm like one step away from dying from acute boredom. You have to create a personality, you have to create something that distinguishes you from other people, or you have to be super hot or super rich. You choose what you want to work with. That's not up to me. Just don't be the generic guy who says, I have a dad bod. You cannot have a dad bod unless you're a dad. And even if you are a dad, you need to lose that, because what kind of example are you giving to your kids to be unhealthy? No more dad bods. I don't want to hear that ever again. I don't want to see that written ever again. If you are bald, it's time to get a hair transplant. If you're young and you are not bald yet, but everyone in your family is, it's time to start saving up money for the hair transplant. It's not a shame to get a hair transplant, and I refuse to be shamed for recommending it. Women get cosmetic procedures all the time. You really think all the women you see in your mind are 100% natural? No. Why not men too? It's a permanent procedure, it's easy, it's much more easier than a lot of other procedures, and it's going to give you a lot of points in your looks. And don't start with Jeremy Meeks and Bruce Willis and I don't know what, that they have superior bone structure, unless you have their bone structure. If you become bald, you're going to descend from ugly to uglier. And from invisible to, I look at women and they file a sexual harassment complaint. Okay, time to look at what is actually going to help you. I'm making these videos telling people what will help them, not telling people what they want to hear. It would have been so easy for me to just say that, oh, there is a right person for everyone. For the right woman, looks will not matter. The woman who says looks will not matter is either a woman who is after your money, or a woman who is such a leftover that she thinks that she's going to marry her top sub or her top STP, and she's going to marry a guy who will never leave her because she's insecure. You don't want that woman. I don't want that for you. What kind of relationship is that? You'd much better get an advanced sex toy than that shit, or a replica AI girlfriend. I don't know if this video helped, I don't know if there's anyone watching at this point. It became, holy hell, 29 minutes of Blackpill. So if you want more information, or if you want advice about your own individual situation, OnlyFans above. I do not have the time to give advice for free to people individually, and also, who's going to buy the cow if I give them milk for free? The people who message me with 10 paragraphs about their life, if I respond to you, and someone who pays to be in my OnlyFans for advice sees it, are they going to feel stupid? So if you're going to contact me, have a life story written down, 2 or 3 paragraphs of your specific problem to have some information to work with. The plan isn't going to be that Persephone is going to date me, or the plan B that started to appear, Persephone is going to recommend another femdom goddess to date me. I'm not going to do that. Or some magical solution. For example, I'm 78 years old and my penis is 1 inch and I'm morbidly obese and I'm living with my mom and I'm stealing her welfare to buy like gold for my gaming addiction. What do you suggest should happen? This is something that, don't let things get to that point. And if things go to that point, be prepared that we're going to have a very long-term plan and the change is going to be slow and painful. I don't have magical solutions. If you let yourself become 3,000 pounds and you have a gaming addiction or a porn addiction that you jerk off to porn 9 hours a day until your dick falls off, I don't have magical solutions to that. Prevention is the best cure, okay? And if you watch this and you see that you have been digging yourself into a hole, the first step is to stop digging. Like, stop what you're doing right away. If you ate junk food yesterday, don't eat it today. Eat something healthier today. If you were on porn sites for 8 hours yesterday, be for 7 hours today. Anything you can. Just don't let things escalate, because whatever we do that is unhealthy and we let it just happen, it tends to escalate. Okay, that's the first and most important step.